Welcome to another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by Tim Priester and Drew Mentok of Irish Illustrated and Pete Sampsey, the Athletic. We are 26 hours late with this podcast, and not coincidentally, my basement flooded 26 hours and 11 minutes ago. So, with that being said, professionals are handling it now. And, guys, the portal is closed, kind of. And I think that would be the news. But the real news is there was no major announcements for Notre Dame. They're not the only major team with that, but no major portal announcement seems like it's coming for Notre Dame.
It's I mean, it really speaks highly of the program, speaks highly of Marcus Freeman and the culture. These are all things that we've talked about before. Guys don't want to leave. And there are some other factors involved with some of those players, some that are maybe closer to getting their degree, NIL, et cetera, et cetera. But it's pretty amazing. I think you guys, of course, chime in with other factors involved here, but I think it mainly speaks about the Notre Dame football program and how it's one that players don't easily leave.
I agree with that. I certainly felt like when the spring portal opened that it was going to be overly breathlessly covered because if you had money to spend to get somebody to move, you had already spent it. And I think that's exactly what happened. I mean, what was the big spring portal move nationally? Was
Yeah,
there
I don't
one?
know.
I mean, Nico
Yeah.
from Tennessee
Yeah.
entering, but it was only to him conceivably probably
Yeah.
make less than he was asking. So
That's
to
like
kind
the
of fish your
the
point.
one-off of all
Yeah,
one-offs.
that's barely a portal move, really, at that point.
Yeah, that was a free agent holdout. So yeah, I think Notre Dame is in the haves category of college football, and if you're a have and you had your stuff together from NIL and a roster management standpoint, you came through the spring portal without much of an issue. And I'm still surprised that a few guys, like kind of like the old school transfers
Right.
pre-portal,
No, of
guys
course.
who are not
Yeah.
playing, that don't really have a path to playing time, like I thought they would be out, looking for a new opportunity. But maybe that speaks to the NIL where just well, I'm gonna get this degree here and I'm getting paid to be here and I like it here. So
And we win.
and we win. So like that's pretty good. Like let's just keep doing that. Even if the coaching staff's like, look, I'm sure they were quite blunt with some players, like, look, there's not a
Right.
path to playing time for you here. And those players are like, that's cool. I'm good. I like it here.
Usually those guys aren't good, though. It seems like some of the guys are good now.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth it. You both touched on the degree aspect, but I think there's a lot of guys who are maybe, sophomores realizing they've maybe hit their ceiling here, but that, Notre Dame recruits guys based on like you're coming here for that, 40-year decision type of thing. And there's a lot of guys like you're selling that and they're going to buy into it too. So if that's the big talking point. I think that's something we're staying that kind of differentiates Notre Dame. I know you said, O'Malley, this isn't the only program to
Yeah.
have a quiet window, but like that's something that's going to separate Notre Dame is adding that's maybe different than what other people are selling.
Yeah, Alabama did not lose anyone either. I found that out with a quick Google search. The first thing that popped up when I wrote the word portal in Google was why didn't Alabama lose a single transfer in the spring portal? I was like, well, all right. Well, they have a good program too. That might be one of the reasons. They probably have good NIL and they win and they like it in Alabama as well. But no, it's great news because like I was sharing with the board, I think Priester 2023, no, probably 2022, we had a December admin at Irish Illustrated that had like 19 names in it that we were told are going to go in the portal. 17 by the time that season started went in the portal. That's nuts. And of course, then 2023 was the crazy young wide receiver exodus. And this year, everybody's freaking out because they lost a couple of backup guards. That was, they were really good players. They helped Notre Dame a lot. But like that's the freak out right now. It remained the freak out that Notre Dame lost a backup quarterback and two guys that were going to be back, or three guys that were going to be backup guards. One of them could have pushed. One of the three, I'm not saying who, one would have pushed for a spot. That's just the way it works. But
Yeah,
that's the freak out.
the losses of the offensive linemen happened immediately, and
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, you just played for the national
Yeah.
title, and you're losing guys, and you figure that that's going to gain some momentum, and it's not the case. But you look at, like, I don't necessarily like singling out guys, but like, okay, Ben Minnick, he could go somewhere else and probably play, or he could be a key special teams guy for Notre Dame, who's in the running for nickel work. He wouldn't start there probably. He's going into his third year, or Brennan Vernon. Brennan Vernon, can he go somewhere else and play? Probably, but he's halfway home to his degree from Notre Dame. I don't know. We're not
And these names
interacting.
weren't even guys we wrote. I'll point out. I'm glad you said their names because we didn't even put them in the admin. We never
Yeah,
heard about it. Those are just us spitballing as Notre Dame football
right.
analysts. Like, we put like 5 names in there. You heard a
Yeah, and
rumor
there
about
were
them.
there
There's nothing.
there there were a couple other big name
Yeah,
guys. I don't know, whether we need to. I know people want us to say who some of those guys are, but I don't know that we need to go into that because that's kind of overly speculative, I think. But
but not your two. We should point out since you brought up two names. Those two weren't in it. They were two of them.
no, no,
Yeah.
they were not. They were not
Yeah.
two of the ones that were looking at. So it's a good sign for the program. The big names, I guess, or a couple of the bigger names came early, and they just didn't follow suit. And we've talked about, Pete, you mentioned it. I mean, the time to leave is in December when there are more opportunities.
Yeah.
Now there are fewer opportunities, and that has really shown itself here in the last week.
We're gonna have some questions on this too, so I'll switch gears to the draft, and I want to start with Drew because Drew, your 3-month odyssey of Notre Dame draft coverage has come to an official end as of as of Saturday. Drew Madtock did a fantastic job starting with the combine. I answered a question and did not put it on this podcast because I think you all agree. One of the questions was, "What is the biggest surprise from Notre Dame's draft weekend?" And there wasn't one, so we don't have anything to talk about there. I think it was nailed the week before.
Pretty much true to
Pretty
form.
much,
I mean, we projected on a podcast, and it was pretty much true to form.
which doesn't usually
I thought
happen in a
Watts,
draft. Like
yeah,
that's tough.
I thought Watts could, it certainly could have gone in the second round, but
I
I don't
think
think it's outrageous. And he went in the third round. His productivity on the field is top of the line, and some of the numbers off, in testing don't match it, and that can be a big deal in the NFL.
Yeah, I think maybe like this isn't only a slight surprise, but Watts being the sixth safety to be taken when he was consistently looked at the third. I mean, you expect maybe like one guy to sneak in over him, but for a couple other guys to jump him is a slight surprise. But again, he wasn't a guy who tested off the charts or anything like that. So you can see why teams might talk themselves into somebody else over him, even though like the productivity is very clear.
Yeah, I thought Riley Mills maybe would go a little bit later just because of the knee, but like I certainly thought he would get drafted. And I even referenced like Capron Lewis Moore from the 2013 draft on a previous podcast. He went in the 6th round after a similarly late terrible
Yeah.
knee injury. So I mean it's not that big of a surprise. So yeah, it's like when Drew, I think you referenced like Bo Collins maybe getting in the 7th round. When that's your surprise of the draft, like that's barely noteworthy.
I still think Howard Cross. Now I think Howard Cross went to a really good place for himself because he's joining Al Golden, so he has the benefit of the doubt right away. Somebody was already joking because I think Pete made the comment facetiously, "Is this the next Isaac Rochelle in your 10 years?" All I said was 2 contracts. He's not as big as Isaac Rochelle, so a second signed contract. But I feel like there's a lot of Notre Dame guys that can sign. This is important. I mean, for Jack Kaiser and Riley Mills injured and Mitchell Evans, Howard Cross to sign that second contract where you've made it through 3 years. Somebody else still wants you. Maybe you move on. Look what Drew Tranquil has been able to do since signing his second contract. I mean, it is like it's a jump start of your career for many people, or if not, it's security. But I was actually maybe mildly surprised Jack Kaiser went in the 4th round only because he didn't my surprise was Jack Kaiser didn't test off the charts. He just tested well. I thought Jack Kaiser was going to have crazy numbers, and that would have put him in the 3rd or 4th round. Instead, he had regular good numbers.
I think it helped that where he did chest really well, it was like in the very short area quickness stuff.
Yeah.
Like I think like his 10-yard splits and stuff were at the top or maybe the top for like linebackers compared to the combine. So I think that's where he did like exceptionally well. But I agree. I think he was the 5th linebacker taken overall too. So it's not even he went higher than we thought. Like they looked at him favorably compared to the rest of this draft class at his position too. But I think he just like killed the like post season process. Like he was one of the standouts at the Senior Bowl, like interviewed very well at the combine, and then went into pro day and like did everything he could. I mean, I think his 40 time was still similar to some of the defensive backs, and he's looked at as a guy who can maybe thrive in coverage and stuff at the next level too, in addition to being like an immediate special teams impact guy.
Pete, Dane Brugler from The Athletic had Kaiser as the 12th best linebacker, and for him to be the fifth one chosen is really, really impressive. That speaks to Jack Kaiser. And I look at Riley Leonard going in the sixth round of the Colts. That was a really good situation for their quarterbacks are Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, who's on the back end of his career. I'm not saying that, I'm not predicting Riley Leonard's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, but that was a good landing spot, I thought, for him. And Mitchell Evans, certainly he would have left the year before, so we would have seen where he was drafted last year had he not had the knee injury, but he's walking into a two tight end situation with the Panthers, one of which is Tommy Tremble, who's been around in the league for a while now. So that's probably a good situation for him. I know somebody on the Irish Illustrated, the Four Horsemen Lounge message board said he didn't think that Mills would have gone higher than the fifth round had he, even if he didn't have the knee injury. I totally disagree with that. He would have been I think top 3 rounds. He goes to the Seahawks where they run a 3-man front. Obviously he's going to be compromised going into this season, but he's the third right side defensive end, at least the depth chart that I saw of the Seahawks. So I think there's some good situations out there for some of these Notre Dame draftees.
How about shout out to Clark Lee, whose linebacker evaluations in the 2019 recruiting class were J.D. Bertrand, Maris Leafau, and Jack Kaiser. 1A small school football, and 2 add-ons at the end of the class where they weren't even sure if they had a scholarship available for them. Third, fourth, and fifth round picks.
Really
and
impressive.
At least 2 of them, and the 2 guys that are in the league have already started at least 1 game.
Yeah.
Well, and think about it compared to the 2018 class, which we all would have looked at with like Jack Lamb and Shane Simon, who are like top 100 guys. Bo Bauer, like that class was looked at like you would have expected that out of them, and then it was actually the kind of unheralded 2019 class that produced this type of talent.
Priester, I'm glad you mentioned good spots because and that Mills is compromised for his first year. You know who's not is Mitchell Evans, because he is going to go to camp fully removed and fully recovered.
Yeah.
And they're getting the best version of Mitchell Evans since he got hurt. So that'd be fun. That's going to be fun to watch Mitchell Evans because he's got a skill. He's got 3 skills that really help you in the NFL these days. He can get open, he can make contested catches, and he's fearless going after the football. And those are all back for him.
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to Mitchell Evans, he doesn't have Tyler Warren, perhaps quickness, but when you add it all up, it's really a great. It's a very advantageous situation for him. And on the record, full disclosure, I thought Clark Lee he didn't need to get Jack Kaiser. I didn't see what he was going to add to the equation. So that'll summarize, or that'll give you an idea that a lot of my film reviews are not accurate at times.
Well, that's a good segue into another film review.
Yes, it is.
Not to throw a lead balloon.
I didn't mean to do that, but
but Tim Priester, you were pretty high on a certain safety that committed to Notre Dame since our last podcast, Aiden Pouncey. I made the joke on Monday Musings: is that Harrison Smith or Aiden Pouncey? If you did not get that, it's because Priester has said more than one occasion your favorite film review you've ever done was Harrison Smith when he was coming into Notre Dame.
Yeah, and I'm not saying Aiden Pouncey is going to be a first-round draft choice, but I love writing film reviews because it's like I get to dip into the like kind of 1920s prose sometimes, some of the flowery prose
you
that
dipped
goes
into
with
it this time too.
Oh, there's no doubt. I do that a lot, and I enjoy doing it. And I try not to exaggerate with it, but Aiden Pouncey, this guy is a tremendous football player, and he can do like 6 different things. You want to play safety, corner, nickel, wide receiver, punt returner, kick returner, I guess. I think more punt returner than kick returner. If he was 100, he's definitely a top 100 player. I think he's listed at 134. He will end up as a top 100 player in the country when all is said and done. And if he's listed at 160, he's probably more than that now. But if he was listed as 175 last year, I think he'd be a top 50 player. His football instincts are absolutely top of the line. He's physical at 165 pounds or whatever he is. He's a great athlete. He isn't necessarily a blazer, but he runs away from people. And he's playing in Florida. I think he's outstanding. I think he's I go into a lot of film reviews and I don't want to have any preconceived notions, and I didn't with him. And I absolutely loved everything I saw about him.
I like that the second clip on his highlights that I watched was him getting a taunting penalty on
Oh,
a
right.
kickoff return
When he's
touchdown.
running down the sideline,
Yeah, where he kind of
he
like
pulled on
pulled a
Xavier
Xavier
Watts.
Watts at
Pulled a
USC
Xavier?
kind of thing. Because it was like at the highlight starts, and you're like, well, he's not going to bring this back. I wonder why this is even on here. And then like broken tackles later, he's running down the sideline and like giving it to the opposition. So yeah, he seems like I mean, obviously the physical traits are there, but he's got an attitude about him too that you like in a very, very high end player.
Priest, I'm wondering if you did a Jalen Harrelson basketball film review and put the words Cager or Granny Shot in there for your 1920s vernacular.
I haven't used cager in a long time. I don't know if many people realize that was an old term because the original basketball was played within a cage, within netting or something. So that's how they got that nickname. No, I haven't used that one in a while, but this guy's really good. I hope they hold on to him. Everybody says he's a Notre Dame fit, so they should hold on to this guy. I'm just really interested to see what he looks like when he's 175, 180 pounds. The versatility is about as great as you're going to find in Dallas Golden is a lot like that too. And maybe you have some decisions to make with where those two guys play. Here. I always prefer defense with a guy like that, especially a light guy like that shows great physicality. But he certainly could be dynamic offensively. Notre Dame's recruiting him defensively, as far as we know, and that's where I'd play him. But he's good enough to play on the other side of the ball as well.
Pete Sampson, you used to cover Notre Dame recruiting very carefully. Could you break a tie for me? Notre Dame defensive back recruiting since 2019 or prior to 2019, which you think is a little bit better as it relates to
Did they recruit defensive backs before 2019?
I don't think so. They just brought in players and called them skill or big skill at that point, but they're a little bit better now at that
Come a long way from like Kavari Russell. Can he play corner? Let's move him in June and play this freshman and running back and hope that it works out.
Wow.
Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Gal Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With more than a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. We'll be back with segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
Segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. We start with a question from Irish from A2. Notre Dame has 2 first-round picks in the last 6 drafts. What do you take away from this?
I mean, I think I take a few different things from that. One, I think something to note is that a lot of Notre Dame's top NFL draft picks don't necessarily play like the most draftable positions. Like they're producing a lot of safeties or tight ends. Like you're going back to even 2019 with Cole Kmet. I think it was the first tight end taken in that draft, but he was still a second rounder. So I think it's a little bit of that, or you end up with a guy like Liam Markenberg who has shorter arms than expected, and that's going to prevent him from going in the first round and ultimately moving to guard. So I think there's little things like that are worth noting, but I also think it's just that they don't necessarily always have the top tier talent at some of those premium positions that you see. And when they did, in an instance like Ben Morrison, like he ended up with 2 surgeries in the course of a year.
Yeah.
And still the Bucks didn't even go to his showcase last week and still took him number 53 overall. So they didn't even see him work out, and he's been banged up. So, that's just kind of unfortunate because he was clearly going to go in the first round if that hadn't happened. So some of it's bad luck too.
Yeah, I mean, they had 9 second rounders in those last 6 drafts too. So it's kind of to put a number on Drew's point there. And but Ohio State has been better. Georgia and Alabama have been better in terms of pumping out first round picks. And that's just sort of the reality where Notre Dame is living in. You would like to think that they can change that moving forward, that, maybe you're getting averaging 1 a year, 1.5 a year, opposed to 1 every 3 years. But that the way things are trending with the roster, it kind of feels like maybe they're on that track at the moment.
What do you think, Tim?
Well, I do think Benjamin Morrison would have been a first round pick without those injuries, as Drew kind of noted, and that Usu Koromoa would have been a first round pick had he not had the weird injury news that popped up, or the rumors that popped up 24 hours before the draft. That definitely pushed him down. So then you're looking at 4 first round picks in 6 years. I don't know who else would have gone in the first round really out of this.
I mean, Mayer was close.
Oh yeah, Michael Mayer could have gone in the first round as well. So then you have 5 and 6 years, and it's not as much of a story. But I really think it comes down to this particular roster is pretty damn top heavy in rising juniors and sophomores that were the main reason. That's not fair. A lot of veterans that were as much of the reason they played in the championship game as were the seniors. And let's be frank, those seniors, Kaiser, Mills, Cross, and even Watts, they were better off. They wanted to come back because they weren't going to be high draft picks. It helped 2 of them. Mills doesn't count because he got hurt, and it hurt Howard Cross, and probably hurt him because he got hurt too, right? But I just think there's a lot of, you got Jeremiah Love, you got Leonard Moore, you got guys like that coming through the ranks, KVA, that they were the key to this team.
Man, I think all of those are good reasons as to, an answer for the question. Part of it is Notre Dame doesn't get as many 5 stars or high 4 stars as some of the other schools that get drafted in the first round all the time, like Ohio State. Drew, I think that's a great point about the various positions that Notre Dame produces that aren't necessarily safeties, tight ends that are first round draft picks. I think there are some other reasons here too. And Pete, your point about the number of second round draft choices. Look, we draw the line at what are there 32 picks in the per round, 32 picks in the first round. Well, who's to say you draw the line at 32? I mean, because they've had 2 first round draft picks, but they've had 8 top 50 picks. So, and we're not even factoring in, we're only looking at where they were drafted, not are they producing.
Well, yeah, Kyron Williams was never going to be a first or second round pick, but he's better than those guys.
Yeah. So they've had 8 top 50 picks, and in 2021, they had 5 top 100 picks. So, we draw the line at 32 because anything after that's considered, lower than a first round. But I think all the points that you guys made and the fact that Notre Dame they've had 16 top 100 picks in the last 6 years. And I think we're only going to see that increase as we move forward to everybody made a good point here, including you, T.O., because they've got a bunch of guys that are still at Notre Dame that are going to be high draft picks.
Our next question from Not J to Fell 1. And I think, guys, we should probably just go position by position. I'll ask you, which units on the team would you say are Final Four level, taking into account both starters and, of course, depth? Because to make the Final Four, you have to have depth. Let's start with defensive back.
Go ahead, guys.
Final Four level for sure.
Yes, I agree.
Yep.
Linebacker.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just gonna say defensive line all around because that is how the football world works, as opposed to breaking it down to edges and interior. So defensive line.
I think I would go a notch below on that one. So I guess if there's a quarterfinals level,
they're gonna lose to IU. Pete Sampson just said it.
Quarterfinals / make the play. If there's Final Four level and make the CFP level, I would say their defensive line is CFP level, whereas those other 2 positions are Final Four level.
I agree. I need to see a little more too. Like if Boubacar Traore comes back and we look in the fall and he's back to where we thought he was, and Dawson really is clicking, and I think there's potential for it to get there, but I agree with Pete that I wouldn't feel it's there at the moment.
If everybody is healthy at defensive end, I think you're knocking on the door. So, if not Final Four, right below that, just like Pete said. D tackle, I don't know if you're going to ask that. Yeah, I just, you're counting a lot on Jared Dawson and Gabe Rubio need to be really, really good. I know that you can talk about depth and 6 deep and all that, but those 2 guys are going to have to be really good, and we need to find that out in the fall.
Best thing for the angry Notre Dame fan listening right now is 4 months ago, we would not have qualified anything on the interior of the line being playoff level. So that it did make a rise, I think, here so far in the offseason. All right, start easy. Offensive line.
National championship level.
Yes.
Playoff level for me, yeah.
Yeah, go Final Four level on that one.
Well, I got to go running back here. Can we handle that one? You guys, there's
That's
one guy you
yeah.
should probably vote for, right?
Barely need to
Running
answer
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's
back. All right, now it gets interesting. You want to do wide receivers and tight ends together, since that's kind of how it works?
I mean, I would not CFP level. Like it, if defensive line is CFP level, like they're good enough to make it. Like I would say they're on the other side of that line as a group.
Yeah, I would say no, although I did look at a bunch of way too early mock drafts, and they do have two wide receivers that people have projected to go in the first round next year. So if
Yep.
they really hit and it turns out something like that, I guess it's possible. But I agree. I need to see a lot more before that type of
Yeah,
thing.
I think as far as like ranking, no, they probably fall outside of that. But I also know that, Malachi Fields is a really good receiver. I think if you maximize Fields, Pauling, Greathouse, and Faison, it can be a damn good receiving core.
Well, that leads into the next question and the final one. Quarterback. I mean, like last year, preseason was Final Four level. The year before, preseason, though would be wrong, was Final Four level.
Certainly at the end of September.
Yes, that's right.
I don't know. This is the
No, we
one
don't
that
know.
I would need to see the most from. I think it probably is the group with the most upward mobile, like that of the question mark groups: defensive line, wide receiver, tight end, and quarterbacks. I feel like this group might have the lowest floor and the highest ceiling, or like somewhere
Oh,
in
I,
between.
I agree. I agree. It's got the highest ceiling. I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
This is an impossible one to answer.
Yeah, we're gonna find out a lot by like September 14th on
Yeah.
what we think of those and
all right.
how they can respond to that.
Go ahead, Tim. Then I'm going to be
Well,
fair to like the college football listener here as opposed to just us, because this is
yeah,
relevant. There are other people out there.
I think CJ Carr has a chance to be a great quarterback. I don't know that we're going to say great in 2025. That's
Right.
all.
He could be, because if you're thinking about, all right, the best quarterbacks coming back are, playoff quarterback coming back in Klubnik and Sam Levitt, right? Drew Allar's coming back as a playoff quarterback, though I would probably take CJ Carr right now over Drew Allar. Just I'd take my chances on the ceiling instead of the floor. Nussmeier was not a playoff quarterback, but he's coming back.
South Carolina is the
Yes,
guy
yeah,
people have
yep.
maybe the number one overall pick. I'm blanking on his
DJ
name.
Lagway, we coming back. Arch Manning is debuting now. So, I mean, we're only saying Final Four. There's other quarterbacks back, and those guys are quarterbacking playoff level teams as well. Next question from Matt Coble. It might be Noble. I could have messed that up. Please explain how the depth of the Irish roster seems so much better versus the Kelly era, with recruiting rankings not changing dramatically. Are they simply assessing 3- and 4-star talent more effectively? Is the portal addition making that much of a difference?
Well, they're doing a great job in the portal. They've done a really nice job of filling in gaps. I mean, I'll just throw out one idea and then you guys take over. Let's start with Mike Mickens, who turns 3-star defensive backs into 4 stars and 4 stars into 4.5s. I mean, he brings guys in that aren't necessarily the most ballyhooed and then makes them great college cornerbacks. That's just one example of an asset that Brian Kelly didn't take full advantage of.
Yeah, I think that's fair too. Even if you look at like a guy like the traits I think they look for in like a guy who's like a 3-star prospect. Like Leonard Moore was still a 3-star by some outlets, and look at the traits he had versus a guy like Clarence Lewis, who also played a ton as a freshman, but like you never
Yeah.
were going to see that level of upside or something like that. Like the guys they are identifying and taking that maybe aren't going to contribute much to like the Notre Dame's recruiting ranking have a much higher ceiling, and they're putting in the time and effort to invest those guys too. And I also think there's a level of consistency, even if like Freeman's like, they still, I think, ranked 12th according to 24/7 last year. There's not that dip where they're like 18th or 19th. And I think like that, what was it, 2020, they only had like 17, 18 guys. Like they're not having that class where that like kind of sets them back or has a lot of holes either anymore.
Yeah, that was the 2019 class that ended up having 7 NFL draft picks that we just talked about.
I
But
know that is nuts.
yeah, honestly, I think the biggest thing here, like, and I agree with what Priester said about Mickens, and they're really good at development. But without the portal additions, they're not in the national championship game last year, and that changes how we view everything. Like
That's true, too.
everything is given the benefit of the doubt, understandably so. But I think the portal, the hits there, and the talent and culture identification there to me, has been better than their high school recruiting. And their high school recruiting has been good. I just think their portal recruiting has been great, and that let last season happen the way that it happened.
Yeah, I agree with you, although the defensive back is the one spot where we just got to keep. I know we're piling on with how good Mike Mickens has been here, but like when you look and you go in a row, Morrison and Mickey was fine, and then you go Gray and Schuler, and then you go Moore and maybe Hobbs. That's incredible 3-year span compared to some of the other stuff we joke about with a defensive back recruiting before. And if you want to check out the weirdest thing ever, Mike Mickens was in charge of the oddest bad class in 2021 of defensive backs where none of the 6 hit. And it makes no sense because he hit on basically every single other person that's in Monday Musings.
Coaching, motivation, culture. I mean, it everything you guys said, and then you add all these other components. That's why they're playing better football.
Our next question is from Bobby1556. When Steve Angeli announced he was transferring, I think most fans immediately thought Carr is the guy, especially after what we saw from him in the Blue Gold game. Marcus Freeman has says it will be a true two-man competition, so my question is, how much of a shot does Minchie actually have to win the job? And we're not going to put a percentage on it, but he wants to know, what percentage would you put on him being the guy in week 1? We've learned from Priester, we don't put percentages on things unless it's a win or a loss. There we go. Win or a loss is fine to put a percentage on something, but that's about it.
I mean, advantage Carr going into it. I think it's at worst, it's slightly better than 50-50, and I think it's quite a bit more than that.
That sounded like a percentage to me.
I know.
Yeah,
I don't abide by your O'Malley's rules on that one. So
yeah, I'd say like Carr is a 2-1 favorite. And if that's true, then Minchie has a 33% shot in my head, and that's actually a pretty big number. So I think Minchie will have an honest chance to win the job. So he's got a shot.
Go ahead,
Jared. I wrote down 30 to 35%, so I wasn't aware of that rule either. But
did I establish?
You guys are going to learn from not doing. You don't like percentages and over-unders. You always make me do all those things.
Hey, I just want to revisit the fact that Angeli will be starting at Miami just for Syracuse. So everyone who just gave us crap about that, check out the orange schedule.
Oh, that's good.
I'd like to point out that if Kenny Minchie has a 33% chance, that might be higher than Pete Sampson thought he had entering the spring.
Yeah, Minchie really. When I do these alumni club visits, people are like, "What was surprised you about the spring?" And like Kenny Minchie is like near the top of the list of like, I just did not see that one coming at all. So full credit to him for making a huge move.
Yeah, I also think too with Carr, like, I mean, he missed a lot of time last year, and like has really developed, with first team reps this spring. And I think even though like Minchie is more of the surprise, I guess, but like I think Carr still has a lot of room to grow because he has had so few reps, and like let's see what he's going to do with even more reps to start off the fall.
I meant to lead with this. I think Minchie has to narrow the gap this summer to make it a really good 10-day race in August. Is that fair too?
I think it's fair because the window, the reality is that the window in August is very, very small.
Yeah.
So he probably has to make a substantial move and change in opinion a little bit, or altering of opinion a little bit during the summer months.
That's a good point, Tio, too, because I think like Carr I have more faith in as a leader, and I think summertime when they're like leading workouts and stuff like that, that'll be a good time for the coaches to see like, can he step up in some of those ways too, that I think maybe I still have more questions on than I would otherwise.
I'm going to throw this one to Pete to start from Hemi. Assuming the likelihood that Judge Wilkin will not approve the House settlement without some sort of grandfather provision, in other words, that there will be one, what is the impact for Notre Dame's roster going forward? Since Freeman said we will probably have about 95 scholarships, the rest will still be walk-ons. How many are there now? And now we can actually almost answer this, Pete. Further, do you have any idea how the grandfather mechanism will work?
Yeah, in terms of how it works, I don't know. I mean, a logical step would be like, hey, let's go from 120 to 115 to 110 to 105. But that would have been logical the whole time, and that people running the sport chose not to do that. O'Malley, maybe you're off, but I had them at 114 as of today. And if that seems like a reasonable grandfather number to me. So in that sense, it won't impact the roster at all. maybe you guys have a better understanding of this than I do, but like when Marcus said we were going to go to 95 scholarships, part of me was just like, for what reason? Like, are there an additional 9 scholarship players, like legit scholarship players on the roster?
Well, this year there will because no one left, and
Yeah,
that is one reason maybe no one left because you
could
weren't
be.
being told you had to leave. I mean, they're not told they have to get out of school. We want to be clear every time we say this, but
Yep.
they are told they don't have a spot on the football team and that their scholarship transfers over in some way. I think those conversations didn't have to happen as much this year. So I think there's a few extras than normal. Um, but again, I'm always a fan of the walk-ons that, and I mean this from a business model. When Max Hurleman or Jake Tefelsky are your walk-ons, they're more valuable to you than the end of the roster scholarships because you're not paying them NIL money.
Yeah.
With all like the sorry,
No,
all
go
the
ahead.
changes to college football stuff, I'm not sure still how relevant Title IX stuff is, but I'm kind of curious if that's like the max they could see them, adding with
Right.
that in mind too. So I don't know that, but that was my thought process.
Speaking of Max Hurleman, a signee by the Steelers. Did we get into all of those? We didn't.
Oh, I do have them here though,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. I'm going to read them, Tim. You mentioned Cross going to Cincinnati, Jordan Clark to the Jets, Bo Collins to the Giants, Mitch Jeter to the Vikings, R.J. Oben invited to the Chiefs, Devin Ford with the great connection with Dylan McCullough with the Raiders. There's got to be a tie in there, and then Hurleman with the Steelers. But look, as it relates to the grandfathering in of these players, frankly, in order for to get the ball rolling in this direction, that's what Judge Wilkin is going to demand, essentially, right? So
Yep.
that's going to happen, and that's good. Then Notre Dame can figure out on the back end of this how to handle all of it. But no, it's not. I mean, grandfathering in means all these guys get to stay in the
Yeah.
running.
It is just not that hard to figure. Like Pete's plan is so simple. Five guys aren't coming back next year that could have come back. All right, five guys that are always not coming back. So now it is easy to go from to 115 to 110 to 105. It's probably easy to go 115 to 105, honestly, but it'd be better, obviously, for
Well,
Notre
Tim,
Dame's athletes if they don't.
yeah, Tim, we just as a staff just all picked our top 99,
That's right. 99
and
problems. Yep.
there is not there. I don't think there's a whole bunch of argument with the guys that come after 99 from our perspective.
No, we decided, I can't remember now if it's 5 or 6 walk-ons, but there's 5 or 6 true, I think it's 6 true walk-ons we are going to profile this offseason, I think, because of special teams, they have earned it. This is a great question from Eddie Davis, too, because Sampson hit on part of it already. Will the current linebackers prove to be net higher draft capital than the much maligned duo of Leofau, Kaiser, and Bertrand? It's a great question. There's pretty good. So we're looking at KVA, Bowen, Sneed,
Osbury,
Osbury, and then you're hitting into, Zinter would have to make a move later on, and then all the young guys.
I think the answer is no.
I think it is too. It's like unless first goes higher than like if you're
Yeah.
going to average them.
If KVA goes in the first round, does that wipe out the other 3? I would argue that it does not.
it doesn't wipe it out, but it
Yeah.
gives them a good start. I mean, people jump on he's going to be a first round draft pick. It's a little difficult to tell that when you don't know the competition right now. But is he going to be in the top 2 rounds? I'd place a little money on that.
Yeah, I think it's tough because like not a lot of linebackers just go that high.
No.
I think there was 1 in the
Right,
first round this
exactly.
year, 2 in the second round, 1 in the third.
How
And
much
then
money
had
did you want to
Kaiser.
place on it?
Yeah.
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 So
Well,
I agree. It's
$100
hard to
betting you.
Okay. All right, we'll file that away.
I've had such success doing
Thankfully,
that in
we
the
have
past.
couple years before
Look,
KVA
we're
announces.
talking about KVA. We're not talking
Yeah.
about a nickel that most of the NFL didn't like.
But yeah, I think it's just hard. I mean, Leofau was the 4th linebacker taken. Kaiser was the 5th. Like
It's not.
those are pretty impressive. Like you look at a 4th and 3rd round guy, but like they were some of the highest linebackers evaluated, and Bertrand was the most productive out of all of them, and he was the lowest one drafted. So I think I think could be exciting if you're a Notre Dame fan is like this class and they could have that number 1 linebacker taken in a couple years, but like it's pretty impressive what those 3 guys did at Notre Dame.
I think it
Sneed.
proves what we've seen on Twitter. The NFL loves slow, bad athletes at linebacker. That's what Notre Dame had in Kaiser, Leofau, and Bertrand, right? Not
Yeah,
quick,
well,
not fast.
Snead's not one of them. He will have the
People
he
like
will
him.
have the athleticism to go higher. We'll see if the
No,
rest of
those
the
guys are
game
great
matches.
athletes, was my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People were
Oh
always
no,
wrong
yeah.
about
I
that.
mean, we like how many times do we have to argue that Bertrand, he's a great athlete. You can't see that. You can't, and his the first year when he started, when maybe he probably wasn't ready for that many snaps, he was playing out of position too.
Yeah. So, all right.
So,
So Bowen can be, I mean, Bowen's ahead going into his junior year of Leafau, Bertrand, and Kaiser, in my opinion. Those guys were
well,
all red shirts, so it's hard. All right, so let's call Bertrand's junior year 2022. Bertrand had played a full year in 2021 with the wrist injury. Bowen had a better year. Drake Bowen was a playoff impact player. So Bowen's ahead of those guys. Snead is not going to his senior year. He is not ahead of any of those guys, but he's on the rise. And Osbury is kind of like them, actually, like Kaiser and Leafau. He's just about now coming into it. Like, remember, the Leafau lost his, whatever his third year was. Yeah, 2021. Leafau lost his third year to injury.
well,
Osbury's going into it. So
and I
that's
think
what my,
that pointing out Leofau losing that year is key because then he started the next year and wasn't his best self because of the degree of injury that he suffered. And Bertrand, I mentioned playing, out of position. So a lot of Notre Dame fans set their opinion, including some former Notre Dame football players that set their opinion about these guys and weren't willing to budge off of their initial observation of them. And that's terrible analysis if you're not going to reevaluate the next year when A, they're playing the right position, and B, they're healthier than they could have been the year before.
KVA's ahead of all of them going into his second year. We will
That
all
he
agree on
is.
that one.
All right, a couple of questions put together here from Lefty5258. How the hell did we only lose 2 scholarship guys? And then from B Plents 1189, do you think Marcus Freeman was able to use the terrible injury bug they faced last season as some sort of talking point in convincing some of the players to stay and not enter the portal? What else can you attribute the lack of entries? How did Freeman and company keep this roster intact? We've kind of walked all over this a
Go
little
ahead,
bit.
guys. I have a couple theories. But...
Good. Go for it.
Yeah.
Well, I think the injury bug, but also the 16 games was part of it. The injury bug wouldn't have mattered if they played 12. No one would have cared that somebody got to go play at USC when 10 guys made up their mind to transfer, like it used to be in the old days when you were going to the Sun Bowl. So I think the 16 games of the playoff success plus the injury bug was there. But I mean, I forgot they lost 2 scholarship guys. That's how impressive it is. I was like, who's the other one? When we were sitting here talking about the scholarship guys, I was Angeli and I couldn't pull Urlacher, who we just spent last week saying in the old days would be like, oh my gosh, they lost Kennedy Urlacher. It's a miracle that they only lost this many guys, because not because people don't have to love the culture at Notre Dame. It's just weird to me they didn't have offers that were so intriguing. I'll throw another one out there that's not in our admin. Preston Zinter could go start places.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Didn't Clark Lee just get Preston Zinter to join his team?
Yeah, and to your point, Tim, the reaction to Urlacher is the result of, oh, there's Tay Johnson, Jadon
Yeah.
Blair, Ethan Long,
Used to
and
be there's
Aiden
Jalen Brown
Pouncey's
and
coming in.
yeah. So no, I think the season helped.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they on defense they had 22 guys played at least 100 snaps last year. That doesn't include like Luke Talich is at 98. So you had a lot of guys get some meaningful reps, and I think that's enough to entice them on and what they can get more, and shows that Notre Dame's investing in developing those guys too, which I don't think they always did in the past in the pre-Marcus Freeman era. So like even if you're not playing, like you're still getting developed, and I think that is probably important too.
You know, that's a really good point, because sorry to belabor this thing, but when you find yourself buried in a way that you don't see any of your peers even getting in there, does that make it like Carson Hobbs? I think Pete, you asked a great question to Carson Hobbs. Like, what was that like last year when you thought you were going to play? You clearly believe you have the confidence and ability to play. What was it like? He's like, I was so glad for Leonard Moore. But I think he's so glad for Leonard Moore, not only because he's his friend, but he's like, well, this is it. I can do this. That's my path to the field. They're playing the best guy. That he beat out Jaden Mickey, who was the easy, well, just plug in Mickey when we lose Christian Gray for a game. I think that helps. From Denver Maximus, how different will the ND offense be this year with an unexperienced quarterback and an emphasis on the passing game? Does ND have the skill players, especially wide receiver, to run the offense Denbrock hopes to run? And yes, I could have asked this question in June or July as well, and we'd have been better prepared. But here we go.
Yeah, well, Denbrock still won't be able to run the last offense that he had at LSU with what Notre Dame has. But we mentioned if those four guys hit and they're all capable of hitting, it will be a little bit more explosive. But again, it's still you got a young quarterback, you've got a great offensive line, and you love your running backs. Maybe your tight end position isn't quite as deep as it normally is, but if Ty Washington comes in and is a quality blocker, and Kevin Bauman is back to where he was and those kind of things. It's still going to be a team that should be able to actually run the football maybe a little bit more consistently because of the offensive line. But Malachi Fields, look, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't thinking about Malachi Fields right now. Go watch some of his tape, look at his projections, look at his career stats. That is a huge addition to just what we saw in the spring.
I mean, I was tampering with the guy Tuesday after his debut at Notre Dame Stadium. Tim Priester, we talked all about it. We're like, here we go. Let's talk in the pod. The real David Bailey is coming to Notre Dame.
He's your David Bailey.
Yeah.
When I heard that Fields was coming to Notre Dame, it was like, oh my God, it actually came to fruition.
Yeah, I mean,
I asked Denbrock this in the spring, and he's like, the offense isn't going to be that different, which I sort of have a hard time believing.
It's because of that O-line and the running backs, so don't you think?
I mean,
third and short's
I just think like that makes a different offense that much better. You know what I mean? Like everything was built around Riley Leonard, the runner, and like to pull that out of there, I do think the offense is going to be
That's where it's different, Pete. That's where it's different.
Yeah.
Some of those third and short that you would just go ahead and hand it off.
But I think like even the pass game was built around the threat of Riley Leonard, the runner, because you couldn't just leave guys back there in coverage. So I think that affected everything Notre Dame wanted to do, probably in a good way. So I just don't know how the offense couldn't be different next year. And my follow-up to Denbrock was like, what's your get out of jail free card? Because it's 3rd and 3, Leonard was getting the ball. If it was Michael Mayer, Michael Mayer was getting the ball. Like, what's that? Maybe it's Fields. Maybe it's Reardon. Maybe it's Love in the I have no idea what it is.
Maybe it's Pauling in the short passing game because he's a volume receiver too.
So, like, I think the offense is going to have to be different, and then the identity of who are we when it's hitting the fan, that's going to have to be different too. So I'm just really interested to sort of see where Denbrock takes this.
I think he might have been stretching the truth a little bit on us because it's the spring and he didn't want to give away anything. Did you guys hear, by the way? I'll leave the draft analyst's name out of it, I suppose. But he once said Corey Robinson would be a first-round pick. I got a text from Driscoll on this. Said that Riley Leonard doesn't break tackles.
The same guy?
God. Yeah.
The same guy said that Riley Leonard doesn't break tackles. Not Driscoll. No, he texted me about that. Yeah, this draft analyst said Riley Leonard doesn't break tackles. So, like, Jaden Daniels broke 3 more tackles than Riley Leonard in his Heisman season. Did Jaden Daniels break tackles well? Like, what are we saying? This is the one thing that Riley Leonard did exceptionally well. There's 2. Lead and break tackles. That's what Riley Leonard's quarterbacking was.
He was virtually automatic on 3rd and 4th and short.
Yes. No, yeah, exactly. Like, anyway, every once in a while, I just think, wow, maybe I should watch the draft more closely. Our final question from Phil FL. What is the most surprising team development since the college football championship game? The 3 QB race shrinking to 2, with Angeli being the transfer. ND recruiting revival since the hiring of Mike Martin at GM. The progress of the defensive line. The overall impression we have of Notre Dame's 2025 depth chart and personnel. Or something else. Pete, your Minchie thing is probably a number 1 there.
Yeah, I'm torn between 1 and 3. The other ones I think are number 2 is kind of too early to tell. They were number 1 in the country under Chad Bowden multiple times about this time. But I thought that the Jason Onye, Jared Dawson, Elijah Hughes, all like, oh, these guys are better than what I thought is real significant. But because quarterbacks are always the number 1 in everything, I didn't think that we'd be at Carr Minchie here on April 29th.
Yeah, I agree. I had one written down as well, especially that it's Angeli transferring at this point. I didn't I mean I also just assumed it would be Minchie most likely, and even I mean even after we saw him playing well, once that he's from Tennessee, once that Tennessee situation opened up, it's like, oh man, like that would make a lot of sense. And I think the fact that those two young guys are still here is definitely surprising.
I mean,
I'm going.
I'll take other Tim that they haven't had more people depart because they had guys
That's fair.
that are good that didn't depart.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying, but I would also pick number two with Mike Martin because of Dunham, because of Pouncey, because of a running back decision this coming Saturday, which has a good chance of going Notre Dame's way. If that decision of Osborne goes Notre Dame's way, there is some massive momentum going on. Yeah, and I know that Notre Dame's been ranked high at this time of year, but there was a freak out there in February or whenever it was when things weren't picking up recruiting wise. Well, they're picking up now, and I'm just really impressed with Mike Martin, and I think that that's a trend that's going to continue, and I think it'll continue this Saturday as well.
I think the only reason I wouldn't put that one is because it's not surprising to me. Like it's important. Like, don't get me wrong, it is really
Okay,
important. I thought that Mike Martin, once he got his feet under him, would
you
do a really
expected,
good
in other
job.
words, you expected it to unfold like this.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe are they a little bit ahead, but like, the fact that they're going to have a fringe top five class coming off the national championship game, I wouldn't put that down as a surprise.
All right, then let's not use the word surprising and say,
Important.
really, yeah, really great things are happening in
Maybe
recruiting
this
right
is the
now.
time to explain how reporters can never use the word surprise to a head coach. They should not use the word surprise
Never ask a
question
coach
to
if
the
he was
reporter.
surprised by something.
They are never surprised by anything because you know why? They see those guys play every single day.
I can think of the time Marcus Freeman was surprised.
Well, then to say, like, if you
That's the
point
wrong.
out,
Pete's always on the there's bad surprises too train.
like, if somebody asks you if you're surprised by a player playing well,
Yes.
if you say yes, then you're kind of
Right.
diminishing the player from what you thought of him before. So coaches aren't going to answer that question in the affirmative very often.
This is the final Irish Illustrated Insider of April. We'll be back in 48 hours, May 1st, barring a homeowner's hiccup or something else challenging our schedule around. That literally happened. I will let people know 4 minutes prior to we were supposedly about to record the pod on Monday. But this worked out well in the end. For Tim Priester and Drew Mantak of Irish Illustrated and Pete Sampson of The Athletic, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thanks for watching and listening to Irish Illustrated Insider.